You took what? I gasped into the phone, my voice cracking as the bank representative repeated the devastating news. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson, but your retirement account shows a balance of $0. The funds were withdrawn yesterday through electronic transfer. My name is Josephine Thompson. I'm 57 years old, and until that moment, I thought I understood betrayal. I had lost my husband Harold to cancer 3 years ago, endured months of chemotherapy appointments and hospital visits, and somehow found the strength to rebuild my life in Jacksonville, Florida. But nothing had prepared me for this phone call that would shatter everything I believed about family and trust. The phone slipped from my trembling hand as I stared at the stack of bills on my kitchen table. $180,000. Gone. Harold and I had saved every penny for 34 years, sacrificing vacations and luxuries so we could retire comfortably. That money was supposed to cover my medical expenses, keep me in our little house, and provide security for whatever years I had left. Without it, I faced losing everything Harold and I had worked for. My daughter Emily had been acting strangely for months, but I attributed her distance to stress from her new relationship with Travis. She had always been impulsive, making decisions with her heart instead of her head. But stealing from her own mother? The thought made my stomach churn. I grabbed the phone again and dialed her number, praying there was some mistake, some explanation that would make sense of this nightmare. The number you have dialed is no longer in service, the automated voice announced, each word hitting me like a physical blow. I tried again, convinced I had misdialed, but the same message echoed through my empty house. Emily had vanished along with my life savings, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of her betrayal. I spent the next 3 days in a fog of disbelief, calling banks, checking account statements, and trying to understand how my own daughter could destroy me so completely. The evidence was undeniable: forged signatures on withdrawal forms, fraudulent identification documents, and a paper trail that led directly to Emily and her boyfriend Travis Morrison. They had planned this theft with cold precision, using my grief and trust against me. Harold had always worried about Emily's judgment, especially when it came to men. She had a pattern of falling for smooth talkers who promised her the world, but delivered only heartache. Travis seemed different at first, charming, attentive, always eager to help with my computer problems or household repairs. I should have recognized the signs, should have questioned why a 32-year-old man with no steady job could afford expensive gifts for my daughter. The detective assigned to my case, Officer Patricia Valdez, delivered the crushing news during our second meeting. Mrs. Thompson, I need to be honest with you. Cases like this rarely result in recovery of stolen funds. Your daughter and her boyfriend have likely fled the state, possibly the country. Even if we catch them, the money is usually spent or hidden where we cannot trace it. I sat in that sterile police station, feeling older than my 57 years, wondering how I would survive. My part-time job at Brightmarsh Publishing barely covered basic expenses, and without my retirement funds, I faced foreclosure within months. The house where Harold and I had built our life together, where Emily had taken her first steps and blown out birthday candles, would soon belong to strangers. That evening, as I sorted through old photo albums, I found pictures of Emily as a little girl. Gap-toothed smiles, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings filled with laughter. Where had I gone wrong? How had my sweet daughter become someone capable of such cruelty? The Emily who used to bring me dandelions and homemade cards would never have stolen from her own mother, especially not the money Harold had worked double shifts to save. Sleep became impossible. I lay awake, calculating how long I could afford groceries, wondering if I should sell Harold's wedding ring to pay the electric bill, contemplating the unthinkable possibility of moving to a nursing home with strangers. Emily knew exactly what she had taken from me. Not just money, but dignity, security, and the future Harold and I had dreamed of together. 2 weeks after discovering the theft, as I sat staring at another stack of overdue bills, my phone buzzed with a text message that made my blood run cold. The sender was listed as Harold, my dead husband's name, and the message read, "Don't worry, we'll fix this and get your money back." My hands shook as I read the words again and again. Someone was using Harold's name, playing a sick joke on a grieving widow. I thought about all the scammers who targeted elderly people, the criminals who preyed on vulnerability and desperation. But something about the message felt different, not threatening or demanding, but strangely comforting. I called the phone number associated with the text, but it went straight to voicemail with no greeting. That night, I received another message. I know you're scared, but trust me. Emily and Travis think they got away with it, but they're wrong. Justice is coming. The words sent chills down my spine, but also sparked something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Over the next few days, the mysterious Harold sent cryptic updates that suggested someone was actively investigating Emily and Travis. They're in Miami, living like millionaires on your money. Travis has done this before to other families. Evidence is being gathered. Each message contained details that only someone with inside knowledge could know. I began to wonder if Harold was somehow watching over me, guiding someone to help recover what Emily had stolen. The rational part of my mind rejected such nonsense, but grief makes people believe in impossible things. I had prayed every night for Harold to send me a sign, to show me how to survive without him. Maybe this was his answer. The messages became more specific. Travis Morrison, Social Security number XXXXXXXX, has warrants in 3 states. Emily is using the name Emma Martinez now. Your money is in offshore accounts, but not for long. Whoever was sending these texts had access to information far beyond what a random scammer could obtain. One evening, as I sat reading Harold's old letters, my phone rang from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, fearful of hearing a stranger's voice claiming to be my deceased husband. Instead, I heard something that made my heart stop. Mom, it's Michael, my son. My estranged son who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, not since the terrible fight after Harold's funeral, when he accused me of favoritism toward Emily. Michael, who had become a federal detective and moved to Washington without leaving a forwarding address. Michael, whose middle name was Harold, named after his father. Michael, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I've been watching Emily for months as part of a larger investigation. I couldn't contact you directly without compromising the case, but I've been using Dad's name to keep you informed. Mom, we're going to get your money back, and Emily is going to pay for what she did to you. The revelation that my own son had been secretly helping me, while maintaining his cover as a federal agent, left me speechless. Michael explained that he had been investigating Travis Morrison for months as part of a multi-state fraud task force targeting romance scammers who preyed on elderly victims. Travis isn't just some opportunistic boyfriend, Michael said during our carefully arranged meeting at a coffee shop in downtown Jacksonville. He's part of an organized network that specifically targets widows. They research obituaries, identify women with assets, and then systematically drain their accounts. Emily became involved when she met him through an online dating app that he uses to recruit accomplices. I stared at my son, seeing Harold's determined jaw and serious eyes that I remembered from his childhood. Michael had always been methodical, patient, the type of person who solved puzzles while Emily acted on impulse. You knew Emily was stealing from me, and you didn't warn me? I couldn't, Mom. If I had interfered, Travis would have disappeared, and dozens of other victims would never get justice. Emily was already too deep in his web by the time I identified the connection. The best way to help you was to let the theft happen, and then use it as evidence to bring down the entire operation. The coldness of his logic hurt, but I understood the terrible position Michael had been in. He handed me a thick folder containing photographs, financial records, and surveillance reports. Emily and Travis were living in a luxury penthouse in Miami Beach, driving expensive cars, and dining at restaurants that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. They had stolen from at least 7 other families, accumulating over $500,000 in total. Look at this, Michael said, pointing to a photograph of Emily wearing a diamond necklace. She bought that with money stolen from a 73-year-old woman in Atlanta whose husband died of Alzheimer's. Travis convinced the victim that he loved her, then cleaned out her accounts and moved on to the next target. My daughter's face looked different in the surveillance photos. Harder, calculating, nothing like the vulnerable girl I thought I knew. She had willingly participated in destroying innocent families, ruining the lives of people just like me who were struggling to rebuild after losing their spouses. The Emily I had raised would never have been capable of such cruelty. "We've been building a comprehensive case for 8 months," Michael continued. "Wire fraud, elder abuse, identity theft, money laundering. They're looking at federal charges that could mean 15 to 20 years in prison. But I wanted you to be there when we take them down." The coffee shop felt surreal as my son outlined the elaborate sting operation he had designed. Travis thought he was untouchable, moving from state to state, changing identities, leaving a trail of destroyed lives behind him. He had no idea that one of his victims was the mother of a federal detective who had been documenting every crime. "Why didn't you just call me after Harold died?" I asked, my voice breaking. "We wasted 5 years being angry at each other while Emily was being groomed by a criminal." Michael's composure cracked for the first time. "I was proud, stubborn, hurt that you seemed to love Emily more than me. When I learned she was involved with Travis, part of me wanted to let her face the consequences alone. But then I saw what they did to you, and I remembered that you're my mother too. Dad would never forgive me if I let his wife lose everything because of my petty resentments." Over the next 2 weeks, Michael shared details about the investigation that made my stomach turn. Travis Morrison wasn't even his real name. He was actually David Trevor Martin, a career criminal with aliases in 12 states. He had refined his romance scam operation over 6 years, specifically targeting widows between 50 and 70 who had recently lost their husbands. "He studies obituaries religiously," Michael explained during one of our secret meetings. "Then he researches the surviving spouse through social media, property records, anything that gives him insight into their financial situation. Emily was never his real target. You were. He used her to get close to your family and learn about the retirement account." The sophistication of the scheme horrified me. Travis had played the long game, dating Emily for months while subtly gathering information about my finances, my daily routines, my computer passwords. He had even convinced Emily to copy my identification documents under the pretense of helping me organize my paperwork after Harold's death. "Emily knew what she was doing," Michael said firmly when I tried to make excuses for her. "We have recordings of their conversations planning the theft. She suggested targeting you because she knew your habits and trusted her completely. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was calculated betrayal." The recordings Michael played for me shattered my last hopes that Emily had been manipulated or coerced. Her voice was clear and enthusiastic as she described how easy it would be to access my accounts. "My mom is so trusting," she laughed on one recording. "She still leaves her banking information sitting on the kitchen counter. We could clean her out and be in the Bahamas before she even notices." I had to excuse myself to cry in the coffee shop bathroom, overwhelmed by the casual cruelty in my daughter's voice. The Emily on those recordings spoke about destroying my life like she was planning a weekend trip. There was no hesitation, no guilt, no recognition that she was stealing from the woman who had raised her with love and sacrifice. "The hardest part," Michael admitted, "was watching you suffer while I built the case. Every text I sent as Harold was my way of letting you know that someone cared, that you weren't as alone as you felt. I wanted to tell you the truth, but exposing the investigation too early would have meant Travis could destroy evidence and disappear forever." The federal task force had identified at least 23 victims across 8 states, with total losses exceeding $800,000. Travis used a network of accomplices like Emily to gain access to targets, then systematically drained their accounts through forged documents and electronic transfers. Many victims were too ashamed to report the crimes, believing they had been foolish to trust a stranger with their financial information. "We're coordinating with local authorities in Florida for the arrest," Michael said. "Travis and Emily think they're safe in their Miami penthouse, but we've been watching them for weeks. They have no idea that their landlord is actually an undercover agent, or that every transaction they make is being monitored. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Travis and Emily would be arrested simultaneously at their luxury apartment, with federal agents seizing all assets purchased with stolen funds. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, recorded conversations, digital communications, and testimony from multiple victims who were ready to confront their abusers in court. 3 days before the scheduled arrests, I received a final text from Harold. "Tomorrow we finish this. Pack a bag. You're coming to Miami to see justice served. Michael will pick you up at 6 a.m. My hands trembled as I read the message, knowing that 24 hours would determine whether I lost everything or reclaimed my stolen life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house Harold and I had shared for 28 years, touching furniture we had bought together, looking at pictures of happier times when Emily was young and innocent. Part of me still hoped there had been some terrible mistake, that my daughter would have a reasonable explanation for stealing my retirement funds and disappearing. Michael arrived at dawn driving an unmarked federal vehicle, his face grim with the weight of what we were about to witness. "Are you ready for this, Mom?" he asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. "Seeing Emily arrested isn't going to be easy, even knowing what she did to you." The 4-hour drive to Miami felt both endless and too short. Michael briefed me on what would happen during the arrest, explaining that Emily and Travis believed they were planning to flee the country within days. They had purchased plane tickets to Costa Rica using false identities, intending to disappear permanently with their stolen fortune. "We found communications where Travis brags about making you his perfect victim," Michael said as we approached the city. "He specifically chose Emily because she could provide inside access to your finances. In his twisted mind, stealing from grieving widows is just business." The Miami Beach penthouse where Emily and Travis were living cost $12,000 per month, more than I earned in 4 months at my publishing job. As we parked across the street, I could see the building's luxury amenities: doorman, valet parking, infinity pool overlooking the ocean. My stolen retirement funds had purchased a lifestyle I could never afford, even in my dreams. "Federal Bureau of Investigation!" The shout echoed through the penthouse hallway at exactly 7 a.m. as agents flooded the building. Michael had positioned me in the lobby where I could see everything but remain safely out of the way. My heart pounded as I heard doors splintering and voices shouting commands. "David Trevor Martin, you're under arrest for wire fraud and elder abuse," Agent Patricia Valdez called out, using Travis's real name. Through the building's glass elevators, I watched Emily emerge from the penthouse in handcuffs, her face pale with shock and terror. "Michael, how did you find us?" Emily screamed when she saw my son waiting in the lobby. "You're supposed to be in Washington. This isn't possible. Your brother's been tracking you this whole time," Travis shouted in panic as federal agents led him toward the patrol cars. "You told me he was estranged from the family." Michael stepped forward, his federal badge gleaming in the morning sunlight. "Emily Thompson and David Martin, you're both under federal arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent." Emily's eyes found mine across the lobby, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Mom, I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to go this far." "But you did let it go this far," I replied, my voice steady despite my breaking heart. "You stole my future and never looked back." The sight of Emily in handcuffs, crying as federal agents read her rights, should have brought me satisfaction. Instead, I felt hollow, watching my daughter pay the price for choices that had destroyed multiple families. Travis remained defiant, cursing and struggling against his restraints, but Emily looked broken and defeated. "Mrs. Thompson," Agent Valdez approached me with a thick folder. "We've frozen all assets purchased with stolen funds. Your retirement money, along with funds stolen from other victims, will be returned within 60 days. Travis and Emily are looking at federal sentences of 15 to 20 years. Michael stood beside me as we watched the patrol cars disappear into Miami traffic, carrying away the daughter I thought I knew and the criminal who had corrupted her. "She made her choice, Mom," he said quietly. "Emily knew exactly what she was doing when she helped Travis steal from innocent people." The penthouse apartment yielded evidence of Emily and Travis's lavish lifestyle: designer clothes, expensive jewelry, electronics, and artwork, all purchased with money stolen from grieving families. Federal agents cataloged every item, preparing to liquidate the assets for victim restitution. "Your daughter provided detailed information about 23 victims," Agent Valdez explained. "She kept records of which families had the most assets, which widows seemed most vulnerable, and how much money they could potentially steal. This wasn't impulse, it was systematic predation." The evidence of Emily's willing participation shattered my last hopes for her innocence. She had actively participated in identifying and targeting vulnerable families, using her inside knowledge to help Travis maximize his thefts. My daughter had become a predator, viewing grieving widows as opportunities rather than human beings. 6 months later, Emily and Travis pleaded guilty to federal charges rather than face trial. Emily received 7 years in federal prison, while Travis was sentenced to 15 years with additional charges pending in multiple states. The judge ordered full restitution to all victims, plus damages for emotional distress. I sat in the courtroom as Emily made her statement, watching her struggle to explain actions that had no justification. "I was lonely and desperate for love," she told the judge. "Travis convinced me that rich people wouldn't miss the money, that we were just redistributing wealth." Her words rang hollow. The victims' impact statements revealed the true cost of Emily and Travis's crimes. Families forced from their homes, elderly people choosing between medicine and food, widows contemplating suicide rather than face poverty. Emily's selfish choices had created suffering that extended far beyond stolen money. "Your actions represent a profound betrayal of family bonds and societal trust," the judge stated during sentencing. "You specifically targeted vulnerable people who were grieving the loss of their spouses, showing a level of callousness that demands significant punishment." Michael testified as the investigating agent, his professional demeanor masking the personal pain of watching his sister destroy herself. When Emily looked at him during cross-examination, he met her gaze without flinching. "The defendant showed no remorse during the investigation," he stated. "She bragged about stealing from her own mother and expressed excitement about fleeing the country with stolen funds." The courtroom was filled with victims and their families, people whose lives had been shattered by Emily and Travis's greed. I recognized the look in their eyes, the same bewilderment and betrayal I had felt when discovering my retirement funds were gone. We were all connected by the trauma these two criminals had inflicted. Emily and Travis faced the complete destruction of their reputations and futures, with federal convictions that would follow them forever. Travis faced additional charges in 3 other states as more victims came forward, virtually guaranteeing he would spend decades in prison. Emily's betrayal of her own mother became a central element of the prosecution's case, painting her as someone willing to destroy even family relationships for money. Their luxury assets were seized and sold at public auction, with proceeds distributed among the victims they had systematically targeted. The case became a landmark prosecution that led to stronger federal protections for elderly fraud victims and mandatory reporting requirements for financial institutions when suspicious transactions involving senior citizens were detected. Michael returned to his position in Washington, but we rebuilt our relationship stronger than before, united by the shared experience of seeking justice for Emily's crimes. I deposited the recovered funds into a new, more secure account, and decided to volunteer with organizations that help fraud victims, turning my painful experience into a way to help others who had suffered similar betrayals. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places, and family bonds, even strained ones, can still protect us when we need them most. Though some betrayals cut so deep that forgiveness becomes impossible, and the only healing comes from watching those who wronged us face the full consequences of their choices.